Chapter 16 was on action research, and it's a research method for solving everyday problems in schools. Myself, Judd Brooker, and Marie Barker covered this chapter. Marie primarily set up the PowerPoints, and I'm presenting this chapter on action research, which focuses is really you'll hear a lot throughout this presentation, a teacher-based form of research where it's teacher researchers, to where the teacher researcher term is just simply teachers that are doing the research projects. So as we start, I always like to have a definition. Looking at definitions from our book, Educational Research, as well as other sources. Really, each source had its own definition of what action research is, and so it was really hard to find one specific definition to kind of go with everything. But pretty much most of the definitions dealt with using a collaboration between researchers and teachers, or the teacher research combination. But Mills and Gay, they define action research as any systematic inquiry conducted by teachers, principals, or school administrators, or other stakeholders in teaching. And it's learning the environment that involves gathering information about ways in which their particular schools operate, the teachers teach, and the students learn. So it's done, as it stated at the beginning, by teachers, by principals, school counselors. Specifically, the research is done by people that are directly involved with the findings and involved with the implementation of the findings. And the cycle of action research is kind of five-prong. We've seen 5 and 4 cycles. We'll come back to this a little bit later, just worded slightly different after we dive more into what action research is. But kind of to set it all up, you start with identifying a problem or a topic, what your focus is going to be with the specific research that you're going to look into. And a lot of times it's hard to choose one focus or problem with so many options with teachers, especially in an elementary setting where they teach all the different subjects, or even at a high school level where you get different types of students in each class. It's hard to find really one focus or problem to divulge most of your attention in. But you really need to find one problem to investigate. And so that's the process that you start with, is identifying the problem. After that problem is identified, you need to devise a plan of action to answer that problem or answer that question. And this is bringing in your own understanding, your own insight on what you know about that problem, what you know about that topic, or that area that you're focusing on, and how are you going to set up the plan? What are you going to do? What type of research are you going to dive into? The third area is acting, and so that's where you act to implement the plan that you devised in the previous topic. And this is the setting up of how you will collect your data, how you will gather your information, be it observing, be it questionnaires, be it testing, however that looks. And then after you put together what your plan is going to be, you observe, you collect, and you analyze that data. And this is the sending out and collecting in of any data, and the beginning processes of organizing and analyzing your findings. So this is where you start to see some of those findings, start to see your hypothesis that you sent out, start to see that start to be answered slightly. And then the last phase is reflect and share. In Marie and I's opinion, this is one of the most important stages because this is where you learn and reflect and share the findings. This is the process of taking what you've learned and using it. And we'll get into this again when we come back to this or a different kind of model of this. Sometimes this reflecting and sharing brings out an added question or another problem that you may want to focus on in your next finding. And so that's why this is a cycle and not just a 4 or 5 steps through a process. And some of the key characteristics of action design, which we're going to look at next, there's 5 characteristics to action research. Action research is persuasive and authoritative. It's very relevant to today and to what teachers are doing. It's very accessible to teachers simply because teachers are the ones doing the research. And it's a challenge to the intractability of reform of the education system. It's not a fad at all because it's done by teachers. And again, we'll dive into these as action research is persuasive and authoritative. The collection of persuasive data is done by teacher researchers, so it's done by the teachers, or as we stated, it can be principals or counselors, but primarily action research is done specifically by the teachers for specifically teachers to identify specific data sources to find solutions to their problems, because the teachers are the experts. The teachers are the ones that are going to implement this. So what better person to have do the research and dive into why something is happening, why this has happened, why that is happening. And action research is relevant since teachers are the ones doing the research. It makes their findings very relevant because, as we stated before, they're the experts. They're the ones that know what is needed in the classroom, what needs to be modified, what needs to be kept as a strength in a specific classroom. So these studies are done by teachers for teachers again, and action research provides an increase in predictability of outcomes for the classroom. Miriam and Moore is a tireless advocate for teacher research and in turn for action research. And her teacher research network states on there, it provides support for practicing teacher researchers and education to others about the network of teacher researchers. She states, looking at teaching as research has made me more of a professional by making me more of a student. As you went through probably your undergrad, many of the now hearing grad, I'm sure your professors, your teachers have said, to be a teacher, you're always going to be a continuous learner. You're going to be a continuous student because research changes. You're going to have that basis for everything, but you need to keep learning your new material as new aspects come out, and that's really why action research is very relevant, because there's going to be a lot of that research in it. Action research is accessible because, again, teachers are the ones doing it, and it relates directly to teachers' concerns. Action research addresses several concerns. It affects teaching specifically. It affects practice specifically, positively. It's very meaningful, and it helps teachers be more successful. If a teacher can look at the findings of any action research that has been done, it can help them be more productive in the classroom. It can help them be even more efficient in their teaching. And action research challenges the intractability of reform of the educational system. So let's dive into that, because I know that is a mouthful to get into. But it gives teacher researchers the opportunity to embrace problem solving in practice. A lot of times we shy away from what is difficult or what we don't understand, what we don't comprehend. But as action research kind of brings out, it gives the teachers the opportunity to research specifically what they need, and not have them go and try to find other research avenues that cover this. It opens up that door. It makes action research part of the system, a true opportunity to make changes. So many departments, so many schools, universities want to see change, want to see a positive change. And what better way to do that than coming straight from the teachers that are going to implement the change, instead of coming from administrators or coming from other researchers that aren't going to be the ones to implement the change. So it's easier for them to say what is needed to be done when they're not the ones that are going to do it, as opposed to a teacher going through the research and saying this is what we need to do, and they're the ones that are themselves going to follow that out. And teacher action research is definitely not a fad. It's a systematic effort of their teaching on student learning, because it is led by teachers. Teachers have always looked at how their teaching affects students and how they can improve their teaching so they can have a greater effect on the students, and how to make changes to positively influence and improve their impact. And so action research isn't going to go away, because it's directly led by the people that are going to implement that. Few action research designs that we'll dive into here. There's 5 specific designs: critical action research, practical action research, that are specifics, and then how you do action research, kind of mainly geared towards the number of people involved, is the individual, collaborative or small group, and a school-wide action research. Critical action research is also known as emancipatory action research. The goal is liberating individuals through knowledge gathering and based on a body of critical theory. And it's focusing on life-enhancing changes, as Mills and Gay state on page 460 of our textbook, Education Research. It is really based on a body of critical theory, is what critical action is researched on. It focuses on all educational research, socially be socially responsive, but also be democratic, so that it involves everybody. Everybody can be part of the research. Everybody can have an influence on the findings. It must be equitable, acknowledge people's equal worth as you're going through the findings and going through the research, liberating, freed from oppressive conditions, enhancing, able to express people's full potential. And so the critical action research kind of covers that whole aspect of the people, if you will. Whereas an example of a critical research method is a study done by Patterson, Baldwin, Arroyo, Shear, and Stewart in 2003. That's the Look, Think, and Act. It's using critical action research to sustain reform in complex teaching, learning ecologies. And they argue that educators interested in sustainability should look to complexity science for guiding principles. When we view our classrooms and campuses as living dynamic ecologies, we can, as insiders, make sense of what might otherwise seem chaotic or meaningless. This perspective enables us not only to describe and explain what is happening around us, but also to use our findings to influence emerging patterns across our classrooms, campuses, or our larger communities. We suggest that educators use a look, think, act cycle to encourage and support a sustainable school reform. So they look at, again, specifically the classroom and campus living, and how to modify that and how to go off of that and looked at it as a whole with the entire campus, with the entire classroom. So looking at that, the critical compared to the practical action research. Practical action research is also known as the how-to approach. It's the studying of local practices involving individual or team-based inquiry. It focuses on teacher development and student learning. So it's really the what is going to happen, where the critical is really kind of focusing on your findings. The practical action research looks directly at what are you going to do because of that. So it's implementing a plan of action. It's leading to the teacher as the researcher, and its practical focus is really a problem will have immediate benefits for a single teacher, schools, and communities, because it states directly what needs to be done and how to do it. An example of practical action research is looking at a whole school. That research looked at assessment tests and the classroom observations. The teachers and the administration at the school determined that language arts were weak, and they collaboratively decided to make the focus of the school improvement plan include identifying types of professional training needed to improve student learning. So they didn't just stop at their language arts was weak. They looked at how can we modify our language arts? How can we get that strong? And their findings was they wanted to identify specific types of professional training needed to improve the student learning, be that professional training with the teachers so that they know how to better train their students, or bringing in professional trainers to specifically help the students themselves. And then the 3 levels of action research, like we talked about, is a single school department. So these are looking at teachers in the same departments, and they focus their work together because they have the same focus and interests. So it's a small teacher groups or teams conduct the research to improve a common issue. So if these all have the exact same issue that they're seeing in their classrooms, instead of one teacher going through and doing it, it can be all the teachers coming together and bringing in their knowledge of what's going to happen. And a school-wide is the entire school gets behind one specific plan. The majority of the school community focuses on a problem and its resolution. So if we actually go back here and look at the example of the practical action research, where the school, so the entire school determined that there were weak in language arts, so the entire school wanted to identify a plan. So this would be an example of a school-wide community coming together. And then the final level is individual. And this is where a teacher conducts or does a study, an action research study, to improve the understanding of their own classroom and aspects that are unique to their classroom and students. So this could be to improve specifically what is unique to their classroom. So other teachers, other professors, even administrators may not have the same issue, have the same aspect. This could be a teacher that their class is maybe has lower test scores. And so this teacher needs to figure out why their test scores are lower than other teachers in the community. And with these levels, you don't see an action research plan with outside of the school, just because it's very hard to organize all the complexity that's involved in bringing numerous schools and teachers together. With action research being very focused, very specific on teacher and student learning, to bring different ideas, to even observe from different schools that have different administrators, that have different expectations. It's very hard to bring those together. So that's why you don't see action research involving multiple schools. It's just involving a specific school, a specific department, or a specific individual teacher. So coming back to kind of a new form of action research process, to where it's 4 aspects instead of those 5. We have identifying a classroom problem, developing and implementing an action and research plan, going right into the collecting and analyzing data, and then the using and sharing of the results. So identifying the problem. Identifying a meaningful and engaging question or problem to investigate needs to involve teaching and learning, something within your control, and something that you as a teacher need to obviously feel passionate about, something that you would like to see change or improve. And as we're coming back to this, and you're seeing that teachers are the primary ones doing the research, they obviously need to feel passionate about that. And even as you go in and look at those findings, you need to be passionate about that, because you're going to have motivation to follow through with the entire process and get in-depth findings. And after you identify the problem, it's gaining insight through exploring your own understanding of the theories that affect your practice. So it's taking in, as we stated before, your own knowledge, your own prior knowledge to what the problem is. And it's answering 3 main questions that you want to include in all of these in your observations. You want to include: what educational values do you hold? How does your work reflect in the whole school picture? And how did things get to where they are now? So as you have a problem, there's a problem, there's a focus, a topic that you want to look at through your action research. How did you get there? Is always kind of brings everything into circle as you're looking at that. And then gaining insight, there's going to be 2 different ways to gain your insight. The first is through descriptive activities. You describe the situation as fully as possible. And this is asking the who, what, when, and where. And it's the framework for your research. It's kind of getting everything together and starting out your research. And then you also have gaining insight through explanatory activities. And this is after you identify everything, then obviously you want to describe the situation you will try to explain that aspect. And so this is really the focus on the why. Here you're going to develop your hypothesis. So if we go back, your descriptive activities is getting at what are you going to study, what is that area going to be, who are you going to study, where is that going to start place, when is this going to happen, with your descriptive activities. And then your explanatory is explaining explaining what the descriptive activities are. So developing that hypothesis that you're going to focus on, and really that question that you're going to try to answer. Once you get that, then it gets really into the meat of everything, which is the data collection, analysis, and interpretation. And as you can see in the picture on the right of your screen, there's multiple ways to collect data. You have the big threes: the experiencing, inquiring, and explaining. Experiencing is simply by observing, so by observation. Active observation, by you're going and looking at that. Passive observation. The inquiring is by asking, so it's informal interviews or structured formal interviews, questionnaires, attitude scales, standardized tests. So this is really the giving out of something for people to fill out, to do, so that you can get the information back. And the last one is examining, by using records. So it's archived documents, journals, maps, audio and videotapes, artifacts, field notes, anything dealing with that. And mostly teachers are qualitative, which falls right into that action research. But you can also use quantitative data, which is going to be your standardized tests, that sort of stuff. So action planning is after your findings, what is next? What do the findings mean, and how are you going to share and distribute what you've found? So you always want to get it down in writing, because then it becomes permanent. And so it really helps with the results. And then something that may come out of this is a new question, a new topic, a new focus that you may want to focus your next research planning on. So as you see all this, research and teaching go very much hand in hand. Action research is effective on an improvement method and participatory method, where the teachers are the researchers, and the results are used directly in schools and in the classroom, specifically because the teachers are the ones who did the research, which is the main aspect. If you get anything out of this presentation about action research, is that it's done by the teachers for the teachers, and it can specifically benefit the teachers more directly than a lot of other research plans.